this session is titled Building a Future-Ready Enterprise, Third-Party AI Readiness, Security Response, and Mitigating Business Risk. So those of you who did not meet, I guess I'll reset it here. I'll repeat it again. My name is Prelude McGuire. I'm a partner of a company called Wipfli, advisory and accounting firm, about 3,500 employees. I'm based locally, and I focus on data management analytics, but we have tax, accounting, and a number of other consulting services. But very similar to like a Deloitte, but we kind of look at ourselves very much as focused on the mid-market and very heavily relationship-based organization. So that's a high level. Of myself, I'm going to ask the panelists to go down the line and introduce yourselves and your organization.
Yeah, so Jared Parker, I'm with OneSource. I actually lead our marketing organization, which some people go, great, marketing guy's going to talk to us, what are we going to talk about? I have the unique pleasure of also having product underneath us. So I, not only as being a technology advisory and delivery firm, marketing name for what we do, not only are we marketing what it is we do, but I'm also a consumer of technology and how we're going to leverage that to make our business more effective, whether that's in marketing or within the product organization on how we actually make our solutions more efficient, profitable, and so forth. So looking forward to this. And I'm not from the Philadelphia area.
Where are you from?
North Carolina.
Okay. Lee.
Right. Hi everyone. I'm Lee Berk, Senior Director of Sales Engineering from Comcast Business. A lot of you probably think you know what Comcast Business is, maybe arguably having the best internet products in the industry. But what you don't know is that we're very focused on solution sales through development and mergers and acquisitions. We have become quite a powerhouse when it comes to security and networking. So you might not be thinking about those things. We also one of the largest voice providers in the country. While that doesn't excite a lot of people as much as it used to. Those are some of the things we're doing, and just to be the topic of this, AI is becoming a significant part of our business to allow us to get done a lot of what we're doing. So.
And Lee's a total team player, rocking the shirt, like very proud of you, Lee.
You know I need two of them.
I was sports jacket too.
Yeah, you look great. I wish you would have won.
Erik Young, Regional Vice President of Channel Sales for Thrive. Thrive is a global managed security services provider, playing a ton in AI. So cybersecurity and AI are starting to go together really tightly because we have to act fast. We have to be proactive, and we have to bring all of these tools that AI is empowering right now together to be able to protect our attack surface. So as one of the largest global MSSPs out there, we're heavily invested in AI.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Okay, we're gonna start with Lee from Comcast, and you know, Lee, I think about how quickly it's going to be, how easily people are going to be able to spin up businesses with AI, write a business plan, do addressable market analysis, create products and solution sets. I think it's going to be I think our small business, this is my personal opinion, is going to grow rapidly. Therefore, I think something like Comcast Business is kind of there. There's going to be an opportunity for you. But let's start with you as we talk about digital transformation. So from your perspective and from Comcast's perspective, what does it mean for an organization to be truly AI enabled? How do you distinguish that from simply using an AI tool?
Sure. Now, I think, kind of answer this kind of globally, then maybe bring it in towards, what we do. I think AI is there to enable us, to empower us to be more than we can be, almost like a rippling effect. It kind of, do you ever say to yourself, I wish me and my twin could do this because we get done twice as fast? I almost feel like AI is allowing us to almost be like that in so many ways, whether it's using some Microsoft tools or ChatGPT or something along those lines. In the context of what it's doing for us at a super high level, it's allowing us to pour through a lot of data that is meaningless, especially in the context of security, that we would need a staff of humans, humongous, to be able to go through it. And this way, the machines can kind of do that, and then the humans can focus in on what's truly important. So that's how I think of it.
Are there any case studies that Comcast leads with to talk about how that process has worked for customers? Do you guys lead within the stores at any size?
Yeah, so there's a couple areas. I don't want to dominate, but in the context of, let's just talk about internet access, that we've enabled. One my competitors, I won't say their name, had a significant outage last year, and it was all due to human error on a keystroke that brought down their network. Our AI doesn't allow for human error because it reviews what the human changes are, verifies, simulates them, and then puts them out there so that while we're not selling an AI tool in the context of our network, it's making sure that what we're entering is correct and that the AI can quickly handle a rollback plan if it's not working. In the context of security, again, going back to the example I was saying before, literally hundreds of thousands of entries that could be suspicious the AI is looking at and boils them down to maybe a handful to be able to see what's truly important. So while I'm not necessarily selling an AI tool, the services I have AI behind them that empower businesses of any size, especially in the security area, to be able to sift out the stuff that might be attacking them that they may not realize or inundates to know that they truly have a problem, or is it just someone doing something stupid?
And a little off topic, but I'm curious, how much does Comcast encourage you and other folks that are on the team to leverage AI technologies? Do you build technologies that can?
Oh, I mean, since I'm really part of a sales organization, Ian, from me personally and my peers that are in the organization, using tools like Microsoft Copilot and stuff like that are part of our standard IT desktop. But when I think about what the company is doing as a whole, it's highly encouraged to. We could never offer some of the services that we're now offering, like MDR and EDR, without having AI available to it. And EDR stands for Endpoint Detection and Response, and MDR is Managed Detection and Response, security related. So.
That's great. It's a great foundation. Thanks, Lee. We're going to move now to Jared, talking about AI adoption. Security becomes a critical concern. What are the most overlooked security risks organizations face when adopting AI, especially with third-party models or platforms?
That's an awesome question because I think it goes beyond just security for AI. I think it actually goes for security in general. I think it goes for AI in general. It goes for just about any data transformation project, and that's the answer to the question in my book is baseline hygiene. If you try to build technology or apply technology on a broken infrastructure, it's going to fail. Similar to what you were talking about, you've got bad data, and your data models are bad, you're going to have a poor outcome. If you have a poor infrastructure, or even if you have a good infrastructure but you don't understand it, you don't know where it is, you don't know what it's talking to, is it in the right space? And like I said, this goes for security, it goes for networking, it goes for AI. The idea that you can then assess where you are, and then if you break it into smaller pieces. So I'm going to assess what I have, I'm going to remediate my environment, I'm going to get it healthy. And so when we're talking about security is, am I patched? What does my domain structure look like? All of those various components that could make it a very messy environment. Then the third step of that is, now we move into the execution, whether that's going to be management of, deployment of, and so when I look back at the core, it's understand the hygiene, make sure you're operating from where you want to be before you get to the exciting stuff. The analogy that I use is a deck. If you are going to buy an old house, you refinish the deck, everyone wants to rip the boards off and put those new fancy weather boards on. If the foundation is garbage, you just spent a lot of money on something that's going to lean and fall over. It's the same thing when it comes to our security practices, same thing that goes in when we make an AI investment is if we have not addressed the foundation, we see a similar result.
Really well said. It all comes back to governance around it. So for the folks in the room, show of hands, how many people know if your organization has a data governance strategy or policy or team in place today? That's awesome. Okay. I'm actually really happy to see that. That is really good. That was more than I thought. That's great. This is not a dog whistle or a political statement, but there's two very different trains of thought right now in the way of previous administration was more like regulation based on AI. This current administration is very innovation, right? Like they're innovating as quickly as they can. They're bringing a lot of money and players to the table to innovate quickly and then kind of put the regulations on. There's no right or wrong answer here, but I think it's also, the reason I bring it up that way is a lot of companies, some companies are forward-thinking and encourage innovation, others are very restrictive, right? So I guess if you can, Jared, speak to that, if you will, like, what's the balance that you've seen or that you encourage or that you've just, feel is the right way to go about from an innovation of AI versus controlling and restraining it?
Yeah, this is something we talk about at OneSource quite a bit, because like I mentioned earlier, not only am I on the outward facing side, which is typically the sales and marketing, being a leader within the organization, we're trying to find ways to leverage AI to make our products more efficient, to make our people more efficient. We are growing, we are hiring people, but we're also leveraging AI, we're leveraging other tools to make our teams more efficient, so we're able to better use the resources that we have. And we were talking about the use of AI last week in some product marketing work I was working on, and our CEO and I were talking about what do you want to share? And I ran a simple query on ChatGPT with probably 3 or 4 of our competitors, and I was able to find detailed pricing information that was out there, and say, okay, well, probably can get pricing information that's out there. The second I put something into a public domain AI tool for something like that, it now becomes part of the public domain, right? And so the conversation was, if we want to be using this for more internal development and faster development, how do we do so in a controlled environment that we can protect our intellectual property, while at the same time not limiting our ability to get the efficiencies that come from AI.
Yeah.
And so it becomes, as we were talking about, well, I kind of did this with our hand. We have a policy, we have an AI usage policy in our handbook, but is it strong enough? Have we trained enough on what we're doing and what we're putting out there to actually have an impact?
Like what's stopping someone from going from Copilot to ChatGPT and just dumping in all that private information?
Or they
Terrifying.
go to Gamma and they want to build a presentation, which, here's the other part, that goes against our policies for brand usage.
Yeah.
So they're putting out slides that have not gone through our approved, branded messaging. So okay, now that's another governance beyond just data governance, it's corporate governance.
Yeah, we're an accounting firm and a CPA firm, so we have a lot of restrictions and a lot of private confidential information, so we have a lot of protections. We have a lot of protections in place to keep us protected against that kind of situation.
Yeah, right.
I wonder how startups are handling that, frankly. There was a stage where I had a smaller consultancy and we were working with banks, we had some policies in place, right? So, but, it's different time now. That information looks out in the open, it's dangerous. Thanks for that, appreciate that, Jared. Let's go over to Erik now. So at Thrive, you work with organizations at various stages of readiness. Let's talk about AI readiness if we can. What foundational elements must be in place before an organization can successfully implement AI? People, data, or infrastructure, or all the above?
Yeah, so we've said it a million times up here about data governance, so permissions, access to the data. We were in the early stages of the Copilot launch, and all the IT teams came to us and said, can we get 2 or 3 licenses? Can we get 2 or 3 licenses? We want to test this. And you didn't realize that once you launch Copilot, you instantly have access to the data lake. You instantly have access to all that data, which opens a lot of eyes. So like, oh boy, you can see the bonus structure for all the executives. Boom, comes right down, right? So that's a portion of AI that we all have to be super careful with, right? The foundation has to be built sound. All of that data governance, accessibility, permissions, it has to be foundationally agreed upon by the business, so everyone can look at it, and then you start stacking up and rolling it out slow. I think the biggest part about AI that we all have to understand is what that business outcome is going to be. What are we going towards? What is that operational efficiency that we're trying to achieve? Because inside of Thrive, and I'll relate it back to us, we're a large MSSP. We get tens of thousands of tickets per day from our customers. Our AI engine goes across all of those tickets and streamlines those to the proper engineers, takes the highest criticals, the lowest, prioritizes them, pushes them around the business so we can operate as effectively and efficiently as possible with 1,500 people. So that's the way our engine works, but it has to stay within that permissions and within that guidance of data governance for for it to be successful. So those are the areas where you really have to understand what you're building is a house that has to be on a solid rock. And if it's not built on that solid rock, that house will never stand for the longevity of it.
Yep, what are some of the missteps you see within?
Missteps, rolling it out too fast. I know we're built right, not testing. I think one of the most important things with AI is to test, validate, make sure data integrity is there, make sure data permissions are there. And have that kind of North Star of where you want to get to, right? What is that business outcome going to be? What are we trying to achieve out of operational efficiency? What is that AI engine going to do for our business ultimately?
Anyone have any questions? Go ahead, yeah.
So we saw everything's going to go into the cloud, right? Now we're saying, right, does it look like everything's about to come back on-prem? Because like, if you have all this AI information, right? Information in general, does it look like, from you guys' viewpoint, that people are going to start bringing more of that stuff back on-prem, which is going to open up another, right, we're going to more power, more usage, more roles to take care of all that stuff, because things now have to kind of stay in-house. You guys see that?
I gotta get what you
Can
guys
I
got.
add his question?
Sure, yeah.
If you don't mind. Because that's a great point, right? And do you know of any organizations that containerize that AI, puts that into an AI as a service that allows you to have that security overlay? Everything that you guys said, from a security perspective, the governance issue, you need to do that from an IT perspective, because it should, right? Do you know of an organization that actually containerizes it, leverages external data sources, but then internal data sources, but sets it into the framework of your organization from a business setting?
Do you mean like when you say inside the framework, do you mean like an on-prem?
An AI as a service doesn't have to be on-prem. If you
Yeah,
want it
okay.
on-prem, you certainly can.
Yeah, we can do, I think a little bit of a different, similar, but you're talking cloud, on-prem,
Yeah.
you're talking about a little bit different, but kind of, go ahead.
So, I come from the data center world, the cloud world, the security
I
world.
did.
Where it's hosted, I think is going to still just tie back to what your whole philosophy is on how you're building your corporate IT structure. When I say put it back in-house, no, you're gonna increase your liability, right? Now you own the security of it. Whoever's gonna push that back in-house is gonna own the security of that data lake, all of that engine, right? Keeping it as close to your Entra ID stack, your governance around your permissions, building it as close to the core of the business, wherever the core of the business is, AWS, Azure, I don't care. It's gonna cost a lot. The reason that all these data centers are getting built out and all these AI model engine developers are building on top of those is because they can cost control that performance, right? So I guess the short answer is that there's gonna be a lot of options.
I'd love Lee to jump in on this,
Yeah,
because
and-
Comcast Business works with a ton of different companies. so-
Yeah, I would say, the reason that the cloud exists the way it does had nothing to do with technology, it had to do with the financial industry in the 2008 standpoint, and then we changed the CapEx model to an OpEx model. So if you look at that, I don't think AI changes that. I mean, the cost of money is the cost of money, and I think that's what it comes down to in the end. So, I always think that this is more of a personal belief than representing Comcast Business, but I think, the right, you're solving business problems at the end of the day. And if the business problem is better served by having a PC under someone's desk, probably not, but then you do that. Or if it makes sense for it to be in the cloud, then you do that. And I think at the end of the day, I don't think the problems change because it's under my desk or in the cloud. I think it's the same problems.
Good, Jared.
Yeah, I wanna add something from a security perspective. It's interesting, to your point exactly, we are seeing customers look at moving from public cloud to private cloud, or even some going back into their own environments. What they've realized, and this goes with security in general, is just visibility into the data and what data needs to, so it's a bit of governance, it's a bit of compliance and what data is where and how it's communicating. But from a security perspective, all of that is, do I have visibility into where my data is and where it's going, and is that secure? And can I protect that?
It's a great question.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
you're accounting how, just get the information.
No, I think it's very rare that we see someone who wants to go back on-prem. I agree with the private cloud. I don't see, so when we do digital transformation engagements for folks, it's, customer experience, operational efficiency, cloud data management, like those are the things you're talking about. You're not saying, let's bring it back on-prem. As you talk about, the vast amounts of data that are necessary for AI, to bring that back on-prem, holy cow, what are we talking about from a cost perspective? Like, I think it's gonna be like only the top tier companies that will be willing to take that financial investment. I will say though, I was at a conference, this really struck me as a unique conversation. I was at a conference 3 weeks ago. It was a data visualization product conference. And the industry the guy was in, but he said, they were foreign, and they said that they're looking at bringing it back on-prem because they were concerned about being hit with tariffs on their data in the United States. Again, not a dog whistle, but like, this is these things that are out there, right, that are like being talked about. And I didn't think anything of it. I was like, I never thought that would even be a case, but they would say, if you have your data somewhere else, you're gonna be now taxed on that. It's like, it was the first time that someone brought that up that kind of struck me. But to answer your question, I very rarely, it's like a very rare occasion that I hear anyone say, we're bringing it back on-prem. Like, that's not what I'm hearing.
The cost of money drives everything, so if it's cheaper on-prem, which is not, in general, then that would drive it.
The other thing was, for so many years, people were like, it's such a risk putting the data in the cloud, right? They'd rather trust Bob to run, for secure, like, you got 1 or 2 people in your office to secure it, as compared to Snowflake or Google or something like that, right?
Well, from a security standpoint, with my SASE product as an example, I'm offering a CASB type solution just to make sure that the data in the cloud is secure, so.
Yeah, appreciate the question though, great question. Any other questions around it? Go ahead,
Well, it doesn't matter where the data is, whether it's in-house or in the cloud. If you have somebody who gets phished for their credentials, any way you look at it, you're screwed.
100%, yeah.
Now, how much can they get at that time? That's another question.
Yeah.
In-house, to get phished for their credentials, you have Active Directory, you have a security bill. They can get something, as long as they don't, really infiltrate your network and start exfiltrating your data. Same thing in the cloud. We've had customers who got phished for their credentials. OneDrive, SharePoint, what can they get?
There was a very large and, I won't use her name, publicly traded company that was a cloud data management platform. Everyone in Irvine knows who they were. They had a breach last year. It was very public. And it was just that they didn't have, the people who were impacted didn't have multi-factor authentication. That's what caused it. And it became like really bad. A question or comment?
A question.
Yeah, if I were, go ahead.
You don't have to change lanes yet. You change lanes.
That's okay.
Lee, from a solution engineer perspective, and Brendan, because of the accounting industry, and I'm gonna merge here. You've talked to dozens, you've sat in and demonstrated to dozens of companies and dozens. Are you in vertical specific, or have you gone across different verticals?
Well, there's certainly different verticals that we appeal to because the vertical naturally gravitates to the type of products and services we offer, but the solutions are designed with most verticals in mind.
Right.
Finance, healthcare, for example, tend to be large customer of ours.
And how long have you been doing that role?
In Comcast?
Yeah.
I've been doing this role for about 13 years.
All right, so then, thinking about what happened in the room earlier, when the question was asked, like, how many people are doing any of this? And it was, what, 5%?
Doing any of this,
Like aware of AI,
yeah.
It was a very low percentage of hands up. What have you seen over your involvement in this? Like, the gun goes off, boom. How much time do people have before the people that are doing this now are beyond line of sight from a competitive advantage? Like, this isn't like linear anymore. So I keep thinking about how much time do I have to get as far ahead of the market before the market catches on to the slightest amount, right? Because this is really a chase to how big and how fast you can scale.
What do you do real quick?
Accounting.
Okay, cool, that's good. I love your mentality, good.
No, I was just going to kind of ask, I think there's 2 different ways of looking at this. Are you talking about for your specific business and enabling it to be more effective with technology, or are you talking about tools from service providers
I'm
like
going a little
myself?
bit more macro,
Okay,
right? Like the idea here is, I wonder how, when you're on the other side of the technology, and you guys are, like Zoom, you're on the other side of this tunnel. Like, I don't even know if you can look back and see the beginning of the tunnel anymore, can you? And that was 3 years, right? Maybe, I mean, I'm playing all the words done, but once COVID came in, Zoom was able to just zoom away, right? So there's a huge gap. The gap is what I'm getting at. Like, we used to call it 80-20. I'm thinking it's gonna go more like 97-3.
I think if you mind me jumping on this, I think your mentality, I'm more of like, I think that way. How do we get ahead of this and how do we be more competitive? I don't like people who say, well, if you don't embrace an AI, you go out of business. I don't think that's the case at all. I think there's a lot of great people businesses. If you think about healthcare, a behavioral health facility or a senior living facility, right? Like, if you have great people in that facility, great patient care, great relationships, like, they're gonna continue to be a good business. Just because they're not embracing AI for operational pieces or accounting, whatever, it's gonna make them less effective and less successful. I do think that this goes back to readiness. If you're running a business, if you're a CEO, CFO, COO, whatever, you're running a business, you need to understand what parts of your business are at risk to being replaced or changed or have the biggest.
Taking advantage of.
Take advantage of. So give a great example. Contact of mine is a CEO of a law firm. He has a 200-person law firm, a national company, right? And he's really a great thinker. He thinks like you're thinking, like, how do I get ahead of this? But he's not changing his business model. He can still bill the billable hours. That's their business. But he's saying, what parts of my business may be affected? The filing piece, some things that are still billable hours may be affected, and I gotta be ready for that. I gotta be ready to change my business. And you know what my solution is gonna be when my client comes to me and says, this law firm over here no longer charges me to file or whatever it is the task is that's now billable. Now what solution's in place? So I think great readiness is not just knowing where to implement it, but knowing what parts of your business could be exposed to AI impact. You know what I'm saying?
and just to add to that, repetitive tasks, I think, is the thing that stands out to me. So anything that's could be repetitive, that doesn't need a human to do the same thing over and over and over again. I think that's the low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Can I add
Yeah,
something
go ahead.
from a product perspective? What's interesting with this whole conversation, and I'm sure Drive probably views this the same way, but as a managed services provider, and we do managed security, and we have another product, our managed technology expense management. People assume our profitability is what we charge minus the cost of goods sold, right? To put it in accounting terms, right? Like, that's our profitability. That is not the key measure of our profitability. It's the efficiency of it is part of that, but the efficiency of our teams is what we're thinking about. So if I can support 1,000 customers with 500 analysts, or I can support 10,000 customers with 500 analysts, now my profitability is that's really where I'm looking at this from, what does this mean to the business? It's not that AI necessarily allows us to be faster, it allows us to be more efficient, and allows us to then, like, the other part of the quicker to market with changes as well.
And I think to add to that, it gives your client or your customer a better experience because you're quicker, you're faster, you're
Correct.
accurate.
Yes.
So that at the end drives revenue.
Correct.
Yeah, well, and that goes back to my comment in the other room of like, what are you focusing on? You should focus on how do you increase revenue, how do you increase profitability, not just cost cutting. In our space, in any professional services space, even down to like development, application development, there's gonna be so many ways to be more efficient and more effective and build faster, better, more opportunities to drive revenue. That's a great question. Thanks for bringing that up. Any questions?
I'll give you one example. One of our larger customers on the construction side of the house, believe it or not, very forward thinking, like you're pushing right now. They dove into their business. This was probably about 18 months ago. They dove into their business. They're like, where are we missing? Where can we drive more efficiency, profitability, operational maturity? And one of their biggest at commercial construction was going through all of the permit processes, right, where they have inspectors come in. So they built an AI engine with the drones that fly around their commercial buildings that take pictures of the infrastructure as it's getting built, and those drones process that data to an AI engine that looks for failed areas of the actual development for the inspectors, so they can get ahead of that and actually correct that, whatever, to fix fix that to be able to avoid that failed inspection process. So there's some cool ways that they're super. That hasn't even thought about
when
that
they
yet.
show up for the RFP presentation.
Exactly.
You're gonna lose.
Right. You know,
That's good.
that's far end of the spectrum, and then there's the little dentist, regional dentist office in Texas who says, you know what, I don't have anyone who answers my phone systems.
Right.
I need an AI engine on the front of my website that says, hey, someone calls in for teeth whitening. That AI engine comes up and says, hey, teeth whitening's $500. Reach out to doctor, blah, blah, blah. And then they instantly tag that person, and following that person, they have that person's credentials, and boom, it's off and running, right? So like there's so many different models that you can build depending on what you're looking to achieve.
There are so many cool things that are being developed right now. And
So
I
cool.
wouldn't mind polling the room to see where you get your information around this, because I'd love to hear like where podcasts, whatnot. So there's like really advanced things, and then there's like very simple things that we have. I'll give the example that we have 4 offshore offices in India to lower development costs and whatnot. And the other day, 2 months ago or so, I got an email from one of our offshore development resources who's, English is like their second language. They're usually it's like they'll communicate through somebody else, or they'll put like a very like short email. It was this perfectly written email to me around the status of this project, communicated perfectly. What they did was they plugged in their information, put it in Copilot, translated over to what do they call it, the King's English, with a really good, great grammar, and it was totally consumable to me. And I was like, this is one of the benefits of simple AI at work in our own organization.
One of my concerns with that, though, that very item that you guys were talking about before, yes, that's productivity enhancing, but if they put that information in the Copilot and it was intellectual capital on a project that you had, now it's out there.
No, it's not. No,
Unless
it's
you
not.
have it
No, you're wrong.
Unless you have it containerized.
That's what, most organizations who have it set up correctly, that's the benefit of Copilot. That's why these organizations use Copilot.
Yeah, I know you didn't say it, so I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope anyone here who has implemented Microsoft Copilot. Yeah, I mean, so that's a good point. All right, let's move on. Closing round. Let's wrap up with some thoughts from each one of you folks. What piece of advice would you give organizations that are just beginning or in the early stages of their AI journey? Jared, let's go to you first.
It was already said earlier, so I'm going to have to pivot a little bit. But one of mine is test, and you have to test, and test your assumptions as well. I think people go into an AI type project or a security project or anything, and they have an assumption of what the outcome is going to be when they start it, and then they start tinkering and realize it could get better, or it could be getting worse, and they're not retesting that hypothesis over and over again. Scientific methods worked for thousands of years because you have your hypothesis and you test it, but people want the outcome so quick these days. You want to get it in, you want to turn it on. I think someone else mentioned it, like speed to, rushing to failure essentially. The opposite of that is sometimes you can rush to success, but the failures hurt really bad.
Yeah,
So
great point.
test the assumptions, test them regularly.
Test, and test. Make
Yeah.
sure it's there. I agree with that. Lee.
Yeah, I said it just a few moments ago, but I'll repeat it. I think when you have repetitive tasks that need to be simplified, you don't need someone who's skilled and intelligent to be able to do the, same, turning the butter over and over again. Let something do it for you because it's repetitive. Might as well. Also, from a standpoint of error checking to make sure. I mean, whether it's as your example of sending an email that had the facts but written in a way that's digestible. Also being able to error check to make sure you're not misconfiguring something that brings down the network, or and then finally, just when you have heaps and gobs of junk information, and you want to sift out the junk and hone in on the good stuff, if you will. It can help do that once that's been set up properly.
Great. Eric?
So that a little differently, and this is based on Thrive's whole history of AI, is look at the stress points of your business, right? When you're looking at what you're trying to achieve, we looked at some of our stress points. Our stress points were high case volumes. Our stress points were repetitive tasks. Our stress points were consistent, articulate communication from our project management teams in terms of solutioning and getting consistent data out to our clients. Look at those areas of your business where operational maturity can happen. I think that's where AI can be ultra successful in your business. Before any of that happens, it's data governance, it's building the foundation. But once you find those stress points in the business, and you focus on those. I think that's when I felt the pain kind of release of the business. Like you can really feel the business start to streamline and start to run fast because you're starting to take those repetitive tasks and streamline those out of the business. And that's really the grind.
Okay, that's awesome. Any questions? Any more questions? First of all, thank those of you who brought up questions and comments. Thanks for engaging. Any other questions or comments anyone wants to make? Zoom expert in the room. We use Zoom Info. It's a great tool, and I assume that's part of Zoom. Right?
Zoom Info is not part of Zoom.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a separate brand. No, I like your comment earlier. I'm not seeing trend cloud versus brand. If anything, it's getting more complex. It's in between what people aren't necessarily talking about, which is then using indexing and vector databases that are then allowing the performance of AI to scale only get to the data. That's a whole other level of.
Yeah. The other thing that I'll bring up, since we have a little time, is this whole concept now about build versus buy. Right? Like, you know, those of you who have this week, I don't know if you saw Salesforce acquired Informatica, $8 billion, and on CNBC, the headline literally said, Salesforce wants all capital in on data. Like that was why they bought them. Everyone ever know what Informatica is or don't know? It's a data integration, data ingestion, data governance product. It's one of the biggest in the market, and they really work in like a lot of the largest organizations. They're kind of a more expensive platform, but a great platform. And I think you're seeing tools like Salesforce build, Snowflake, build things, Oracle. You better believe they're building their AI pieces to these pieces, Microsoft. So the race to me is like, how quickly do we need these things versus how quickly can our invested partners innovate and not just beta test on us, right? Like, that's the scary part, right? Like, we don't want to be the beta.
Yeah.
And a lot of these products, no names thrown out there, put it out in the market and they let the market beat it up and do the UAT on it. But I think that build versus buy is a really compelling. I think a lot of CIOs that I talk to right now, that's what they're wrestling with is how long do I wait before I've already invested in this product? What are they going to charge for? Like, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. The comment of uncertainty. Someone said this to me earlier about, not today, but I think this conversation about uncertainty. Wow, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. AI is creating great uncertainty. Like, tell me the last time there was any certainty in the market, right? COVID, right? The web, like there's always change. You just gotta evolve and get used to it and change around it.
I would argue that it actually is putting certainty into your business if you look at it the right way.
I agree. If you have the right governance in place.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're looking for those stress areas within your business, and you're able to leverage these technologies to remove the stress. Now I've got more certainty in my ability to deliver. I've got more certainty in my ability to scale as a business. So yeah, sure there's uncertainty, but I don't know. I'd say there's more certainty if you're looking at an approach.
Agreed. I agree. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your questions.